How do I register a Canadian payroll program account? Registering a Canadian payroll program account is the step that turns your role as an employer into something the tax system can see and track. For a US company, the process is not complicated, but it has to be done in the right order. You need a Canadian business number first, then a payroll program account under that business number. Once those are in place, you can withhold tax and social contributions from Canadian employees, remit them properly, and issue the correct year-end reporting. The main challenge for foreign employers is not the forms themselves. It is understanding what information Canada expects and how payroll fits into the wider picture of business registration and accounts. Start with a Canadian business number. The business number is the core identifier for your company in the federal tax system. If you are a non-resident corporation or other foreign entity, you can still obtain a business number even if you do not have a Canadian subsidiary. You provide your legal name, country of incorporation, contact information, and details about the type of activity you plan to undertake in Canada. If you already have a business number for another reason, such as GST or HST registration or a corporate income tax account, you do not get a second number. The payroll account will be added as a separate program under that existing business number, using an extension to label it as payroll. Adding the payroll program account. Once the business number exists, you request a payroll program account. This is the account that will hold your payroll remittance history, your remitter type, and your year-end slip filings. You will be asked for the date you expect to pay your first Canadian employee, the estimated number of employees, and an estimate of total payroll for the year. This information helps determine your initial remittance frequency. It is better to register before the first pay date than after. If you wait until you are already paying people, you may find yourself playing catch-up on remittances. The tax authority expects withholding and remitting to start from the first dollar of employment income that is taxable in Canada. Understanding remitter frequency from day one. When your payroll account is created, you will be classified into a remitter category based on your expected payroll size and then, over time, your actual remittance history. New and small employers often start as regular monthly remitters. As payroll grows, you may be moved into more frequent remittance categories. Foreign employers are treated the same way as Canadian ones in this respect. Knowing your remitter type early lets you plan cash flow and internal processes. You need to know how soon after each pay you are expected to remit the deductions you have taken from employees, along with your employer contributions. Setting up access to online services. After registration, you will want access to the online portal used to manage accounts. Through that portal, you can view account balances, remittance history, and notices. It is also where you can authorize your accountant or payroll provider as a representative so they can file on your behalf. For a US company, this step is important because it allows you to monitor what is happening without being physically in Canada. It also makes it easier to respond quickly if something looks wrong, such as a missing remittance or a misapplied payment. Coordinating payroll registration with HR and systems. From an operational point of view, registering for payroll is only useful if your HR and payroll systems are set up to use the account correctly. You need a way to calculate Canadian income tax, Canada pension plan contributions, and employment insurance premiums on each pay. Those calculations are different from US withholding and they use Canadian tax tables and thresholds. You then need a process for sending the withheld amounts and your employer portions to the tax authority using the right account numbers and payment methods and a way to match those payments to payroll records. If you are keeping Canadian payroll inside a US-centric system, you may need custom configuration or a parallel process for Canadian employees. Using a payroll provider instead of doing it yourself. Many foreign employers choose to work with a Canadian payroll provider. In some models, the provider processes payroll while you remain the employer of record and still own the payroll account. In other models, such as full employer of record arrangements, the provider becomes the legal employer and handles registration in their own name. When you remain the employer, you still need the payroll account, and the provider uses it to file and remit on your behalf. You also still sign or approve year-end filings because you remain ultimately responsible for the accuracy of reporting. Outsourcing the mechanics does not outsource legal responsibility. Tying payroll registration into the bigger compliance picture. Payroll does not exist in isolation. Registering as an employer often leads naturally to other registrations and compliance tasks. If you have employees, you may also need workers' compensation coverage in the province where they work, and you have to respect local employment standards around minimum wage, overtime, vacations, and holidays. That is why it is helpful to see payroll registration as part of a broader "we are now actually operating in Canada" moment. It is the point where you shift from occasional remote activity to having a recognized footprint with all the duties that come with being an employer. Final thoughts. Registering a Canadian payroll program account as a foreign employer comes down to a simple sequence. You get a business number, you add a payroll program account, you connect that account to your payroll process or provider, and you start withholding and remitting correctly from the first Canadian pay. From there, you treat payroll as a recurring obligation, just like in your home jurisdiction. If you want a step-by-step visual checklist that lines up payroll registration with the rest of your expansion to Canada, you can find practical guides at www.theaccountingandtax.com. If you require assistance with Canadian tax matters, our team is ready to provide reliable professional support. Please contact us at 416-283-8774 or visit theaccountingandtax.com for more information. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.